Today's interview is with Libby Tanner. Libby grew up in a small town in Northern California and earned a degree in communications. She has lived abroad in both Chile and Italy, and her 2025 debut novel, Better Than Gelato, is inspired off of her experiences living as a nanny in Milan. Its backup book blurb reads, when Juliet Evans scores a job as a nanny in Italy, she's ready for a year of excitement and glamour. She is not ready for a diabolical 6-year-old who swears like a pirate and hurls silverware with terrifying accuracy. Still, it's a small price to pay to explore Milan, take million photos, and fantasize about becoming a professional photographer. And yes, she knows she has to take over the family business when she returns home, but a little denial never hurt anyone. And speaking of denial, she is definitely not attracted to research intern Jake Fields. She barely even notices his adorable dimples and quiet charm. Besides, dating an American in Italy is like eating McDonald's in Rome. It's ridiculous. Yet despite her best efforts, Juliet finds herself in the bewildering and euphoric grip of first love. It's exhilarating, intoxicating, even better than gelato, until it's the one thing standing in the way of her dreams. The future she's always wanted is so close. Now, what is she willing to give up to get it? So, just to start us off today, this is a story about a fictionalized account of your time in Milan. What inspired you to write this story now, more than 20 years after it first took place, and also to write it in the way that you did?
Well, that's a great question, Lindsay. And I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for having me on the Writing is Hard podcast. It's every author's dream to get to talk about their book. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. And I would have loved to write this story 10 or 15 years ago, but I was buried in a pile of laundry and diapers. I have 4 kiddos, and these kids are wonderful, but absurdly high maintenance. And it is only within the last couple of years, as they've grown, that I've had a chance to have a little more time and space for myself to pursue my interest of writing.
I
I
imagine that
think
would take, a lot out of the, mental processes to sit down and write a book when you've got 4 kids running around.
it does. We did a lot of, nap time and after bedtime and early morning. I'm an early morning writer, but I think having that distance, waiting so long to write this book definitely shaped the final product.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting thing because, like, with so much time that's passed, you've had the benefit of reflection, you've had the benefit of, nostalgia creeping in. Like, do you think the story that you've told now is different than the story would have been if you had written it 20 years ago?
Yes, because I've got to say that now I just have like my prefrontal cortex is developed and I have more common sense than I did as a 20-year-old. Honestly, when I look back on some of my memories of that time, it's horrifying. And things like hopping on the back of some random guy's Vespa or going on a date with a complete stranger at 20 years old, these things were like, yeah, this is super cool. And now, as like a 40-year-old woman who has common sense and has watched the movie Taken multiple times, I am shocked that this year went as well as it did for me, and I'm greatly relieved that nothing terrible happened. So, yes, I'm trying very hard not to let my um, grown-up common sense feelings color the scenes and the story that I'm telling, and I hope I've done a good job with that. I think if I had written it in my early 20s, it definitely would have been a different story, but I have tried my best to stay true to that young and carefree and inexperienced protagonist.
I mean, if you ever wanted to expand genres, you could always write the same book, but also, what if everything went wrong? Just have it be like a horror story.
Yes, this is turned into a thriller. Yes, Liam Neeson will be starring in the movie. Yes.
Exactly. You've already got it cast, you've already got everything set, you're ready to
Perfect.
go. Well, I think that's part of what the charm of a comedy or a rom-com, where things could go wrong, but it's always just turning out okay. And you're enjoying that kind of thrill of the ride as an audience member, going, this is a safe place. I can have fun. I can watch this and know that everything's going to be okay.
Yes, that is true. Spoiler, nothing terrible happens to our Juliet. She makes it home unscathed, despite the fact that she has zero self-preservation instincts. I will say that I cut out some of the more embarrassing true life moments of that time there. A lot of those didn't make the final cut, which is for the best.
Well, I mean, that's what something else I was curious about with so it's based on your own experiences, but it's also a fiction. It's not a memoir. Um,
Right.
so why did you decide to make it a fiction story where things were fictionalized versus just saying this is actually what happened?
That's a good question. It has to do with the fact that I did not want to own up to the very stupid things I did at 20 years old. Like, I didn't necessarily want to tell the story of me getting explosive diarrhea on a camel in Cairo. Like, that's something best left in my heart and not shared with readers. So I could make a little more, I would say, sanitized version of it and put some distance there between myself and the character. Initially, the very first version I wrote was about 3 times longer, maybe 4 times, much longer than any novel should be. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how long. I was like, sure, like 150,000 words. That seems about right. It was too much. And it was literally every experience I'd had, every person I'd met. My two best friends loved it because they knew all those people. They had kind of shared some of these experiences with me. Um, but it was many, many revisions later that it turned into the story that it is, which is a more focused story and a much better one. So we have the same setting, which Italy has my heart, and we have the same characters that I lived and experienced. But we have a very unique and distinct protagonist who is not me, who has her own story arc and her own goals and dreams and obstacles. And I think it's better that way. It's a better story as a fiction novel than it maybe would have been as a memoir.
So you said that your original goal was 150,000 words. What is the current word count?
That was not my goal. That's what happened on accident. Like, I was just writing, I was just typing, and so excited after many years to be finally sitting down and writing this story. So, just I got some momentum in me and it didn't quit, and the book kind of ran away with itself. I think this version is just under 90,000, which is a little bit more manageable. And again, just a more focused and engaging story because we have a clearer path, whereas before it was pretty scattered.
During your editing process, were you cutting a lot of that before you went to query and submission, or was that something that your agent or editors helped you with?
Well, I will tell you a tragic story, Lindsay.
Okay.
I had this behemoth of a manuscript and I loved it. I think memoirists feel this way about their work because it's such a piece of them. And even though this wasn't a memoir, it was such a piece of me because it was so much of my experience. So I had this giant manuscript. I paid a stupid amount of money that I'm trying to forget about to a developmental editor, and I had her look over this. And I remember it was months. It was supposed to be like, yep, I'll read it and then get it back to you in a month. 6 months later, she emails it to me, and it was Christmas Eve. And I see it pop up, her email, and I'm so excited because I've been waiting a long time. And this is the first time anybody besides my mom and my best friends had eyes on this. So I was so excited. And then I started reading her commentary, and within minutes, I'm just bawling my face off. And my sweet husband comes in, he's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "It's terrible. My book is a mess, and I am also a terrible human." It was a really hard experience. And it was, I think, a little bit unusual because everybody else I've worked with in the writing community has been nothing but professional and encouraging. Well, this particular editor actually had a lot of cheap shots in there about, like, you know obviously the character was based on me and had my same name in the original version, and she was like, well, that was so rude of her to go out with this other man when she's supposed to be dating this guy. And it's like, sure, but also like it's a normal thing for a girl in her 20s to do. I wouldn't say that it's out of character. There were a lot of comments that were hurtful and sharp. So that was really hard. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. I guess I'm not going to be writer. I guess I suck at it. I guess I have no skills for this. And it took me a little while and a lot of Christmas candy to come around and be like, no, this is what I want to do. And I'm not going to let this other person dictate my dreams and what I get to do. So I jumped in and I completely rewrote it. And I think that maybe like the letters in the alphabet are same to the original one, but all of the combinations of words are very, very different. I completely rewrote it, and I, took out more than 50% and told a different story. And that was a hard experience for me just because the feedback was delivered in a really like sarcastic and mean-spirited way, which again is unusual. Everybody else in this community has been so great. That was a hard one, but once I got that down to about 50%, shortly after that is when I stumbled onto some other writing resources, particularly Jessica Brody's Writing Mastery Academy, which I love with all my heart, and that really helped me create the best version of the story that I could. And so when I queried agents, this was in really good shape. I had worked it and worked it and reworked it, and it was in really good shape. And in fact, my agent had very little edits for it before she put it on submission. And then when we actually had our meeting with City Owl Press, they were both really impressed with like, wow, I can't believe that this is your first novel and this is, really well written. So my wonderful editor T also had very few developmental or large edits on this manuscript. And I think that's because I took like the long, slow way. It took probably 5 years of just gutting this thing and building it back up and writing it so many times before I really had an editor or a professional looking at it, with the exception of super mean lady who will go unnamed. Now it's a much easier process. Now I'm grateful and lucky enough to work with some people who encourage and help and edit in a way that makes the writing process so much smoother for me. That was a very long answer to your question.
Um, what really gets me about the story that you just told is that it really is quite a shame that that editor gave you that feedback in the way that they did.
Yeah.
Because like on one hand, I can understand from a character and developmental point of view, if they're saying this all needs to get changed because this you have 150,000 words, this is way too much, this needs to get cut, this needs to be changed. Um, that on its face is difficult because you're looking like, oh my God, I need to cut a third of my book. But because you do have that vague memoir-esque experience, now it feels more like a personal attack where it's like all of your choices in childhood were wrong. You
Yes,
were
yes.
doing poorly. And it's like, well, sorry. And so I could feel like that would have been an extra blow that was just unnecessary. And there should have been a little bit more empathy from that particular uh professional dynamic. And so I am sorry that that happened because that is a huge shame. Um,
It
the
was a tough
devil's
experience, but I'm not sorry it happened because that really was like the kick in the butt that said, okay, I'm gonna really take this seriously. And from that moment was when I started writing in the morning, writing in the evenings, and really putting so much time and effort to improve my craft. And I don't know if I would have gotten there without this somewhat traumatic experience.
and that's kind of what I was going to lead into, where it's like, I'm sorry that it was delivered in the way that it was, but at the same time, there is the kernel of goodness that came out of it. If you're
Yes,
looking for like the spark of,
absolutely.
what did this do for my life? I think every writer has a moment where they've received feedback. They hated getting that feedback, but it was
Yeah,
actually helpful in the long run. Um,
absolutely.
and I think it is important when you're looking at your work to be able to go, okay, this does need a lot of work. This does need to be edited. How can I edit and make it the best version of what I'm trying to do without internalizing it, as you said, like I'm a horrible person, because you're not a horrible person. You're a human being. And human beings make mistakes. Human beings do wonderful other things though. And so
Yeah.
if you're like only like saying like I wrote this book and it's awful, like it's a really difficult thing to overcome. And I think what you should be really proud of is the fact you did overcome it. You did put the work in. You did say, okay, I don't particularly want to work with this individual again, but I
Yeah.
can find other people who can help me in the way that I communicate better with, so that I can improve my craft and I can make sure that I'm getting the story out the best way that it can get out.
Yeah, and that really is what happened. And I credit my husband and Christmas Reese's peanut butter cups for getting me through that dark time. And I'm glad that I came out on the other side with even more determination to make a go of this.
It's not just that, because I've noticed from your website that you're also paying it forward by listing all these types of resources. You have on your website multiple things of, if you're trying to write, these are things you can look at. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like the ones that you chose and why you chose those?
Yes, I would love to, because I do feel like I mean, writing is hard, as your podcast shares. But I definitely think that there's a hard way and then a much, much harder way. And when you don't know what you're doing and you don't have access to the resources that can even point you in the right direction, that is the much harder way of doing it. And that's definitely the way that I wrote my first novel. And then after that, even like in the revision, was in the revision process, then I found some great resources that helped me, and now have made, gosh, I think I've written 3 books since then, and it's made them so much easier. So the first one that I loved is Jessica Brody's Writing Mastery Academy. And this is such a great resource because it is kind of a one-stop shop for everything. She's got courses on the foundations of fiction, which, if you're just starting out, is really great. She's got a whole course on character development. She's got a whole course on revising. She's got a course on how to sell your book to a publisher, which I took, and helped me like explain, this is how you write a query letter to a literary agent, and then once you get that agent, then here's what she's going to do, and then once you get an offer, then here's what the contract should look like. Otherwise, I would have had no way to know of these things. So she is so wonderful and does a great job of teaching in these courses. And then there's also monthly webinars. And then on top of that, it's got a great community built in. So we've got a whole forum where people can just share wins and share rejections and share, here's my blurb, or here's my log line. Can somebody critique this? You've got accountability partners, which I worked with for a long time, writing the book while Better Than Gelato was on submission. I was writing a second book, and I had an accountability partner that I'd write for an hour and a half in the morning. Then I'd send her a message. This is how many words I got. I'm doing it, and then would get hers back, and that was so helpful for me. So this resource I think is fantastic because you basically don't need any other resources. Like if you find this one, um, then like it's got everything covered, and she keeps updating it. Like there's a new webinar every month. And I think when I signed up, it was $15 a month, which I feel like is insane for how much you get from this. And I think maybe now it's gone to 20, I'm not sure, but it is a bargain at any price because it offers just everything you could want as a writer starting out. And then from there, it's turned me on to a lot of other resources. I think I have Trello on my website, which is a really great tool for revising your books. It's really easy to come in there with a bunch of ideas, and then you get halfway in and you're like buried in the details, and then you're like, what am I doing? I've lost the thread. I've lost track of what I'm supposed to be doing. So Trello's a really great way. I use it for all my revisions now to keep track of this is this scene, this is what I need to change. And then it has a little tab that you can toggle from red to green when you've finished, and that is absurdly satisfying to be able to flick it over to the green side when you've revised that scene. So yeah, I love Trello. And also, I think resources, just getting into a writing group, having critique partners, having fellow writers, even if they're not in your genre, I found it so helpful to listen and learn from them. I feel like publishing a novel is like you're like a 2-year-old that somebody has let loose in New York City, and they're like, okay, like just head on up to the Empire State Building, and you're like, I love that. I see that building. No idea how to get there. Everything's overwhelming. So many shiny lights, very noisy. And I have been able to watch my fellow authors as they go through this process and see how they are handling each step and talk to them about them. When I got my contract from City Owl and I finished celebrating and dancing around my kitchen, I took that contract to my friend who's had published many, many books and was like, can you look at this? And of course I had an agent and she looked through it too, but I took it to this friend and said, could you look at this? Could you tell me, does this feel normal? Does this feel like that, oh, an okay thing? And I'm so grateful that I had that resource of just people learning from them and networking with them and having some hand holding, as I'm going through my first year as a debut author. I don't know that the handholding will ever stop because there are always people who know more than me, and I am always willing to listen to them and soak up all of their knowledge. But I have these resources on my website in the hopes that I can also hold somebody else's hand. That if you have a newbie writer starting out and they're like, I don't even know what to do, but I have this idea in my head of like a high fantasy book, then it's like, okay, well, here's some resources that you could check out to kind of help channel that creativity. I would love to be helpful in somebody else's journey.
It definitely sounds like you're helpful. I mean, like for me personally, I haven't heard of half the stuff on your site. I heard of the chocolate. I was
Okay.
aware of the chocolate. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I
Yeah,
got that one. That
I
one
did put chocolate on. I am the worst for writing snacks. My keyboard is a disgrace because it's just like smudges all over. It helps though. The chocolate helps.
think it does. It really
Yeah.
takes the sting out sometimes.
Yes, it
I
does.
met somebody years ago who was allergic to chocolate, and I didn't know what to say, and I was just like, "What do you do to celebrate?" And I felt really bad. I was like, and then it was like my mission every time she was having a bad day, like find a different treat. It's like, here, try this.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Um,
Try this one.
yeah, and it's just like because for me it's so simple. Like there's so much chocolate out there. Just find the right chocolate.
I just found there's a bar right now in my nightstand of chocolate with salted pretzel pieces inside, and it is so fun. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
good
I
time.
do like a good salty chocolate, I'm not gonna lie.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and also those oranges that are covered in chocolate, those are delicious.
Oh yeah, and in the little shapes of the orange wedges.
Hmm.
Yeah, those are great.
Anyway,
Back on track.
no, but like Trello, for instance, I've never heard of Trello before, so it's something I definitely have to look into more detail because I'm
And it's
in
free.
hell at the moment.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, this could help you.
We shall see. I'll definitely give it a shot. Um, so for this book that you were working on, there's obviously a very clear thread of this was your personal experience, you wanted to write it. But you just said that you have written 3 books since then. Are they all based on personal experiences, or are they all different things that are happening in different places?
They are not based on personal experiences. And it was kind of a revelation to me of how freeing that is because I wrote this first book and gosh, like I mentioned, it took me a long time to realize that like this is fiction. Like your birthday's in November, but her birthday could be in the spring because that makes my plot way easier if she has a birthday in the spring. So it took me a dumb amount of time to get there. I had just had these hangups about like, well, this is how it happened and this came first. So when I was writing my second book, um, it was so freeing to be like, I'm starting from scratch. I can write wherever I want. I can take this any direction, wherever the character leads. I'm gonna, race after to follow. And that has been really fun. That's been really fun. The second book I wrote takes place in a small town in Tennessee, and I can't say that much too much about that one right now. But I will say that the next book, when I signed with City Owl Press, they said, "Would you consider writing a sequel for Better Than Gelato?" And that's not a thing I'd really thought about because it seemed like a one and done. Yep, this was my experience. I wrote about it. Now I'm moving on. But then the more I thought about it, it seems kind of great for a sequel because in real life, this sweet girl Isabella had nanny after nanny come and stay at her home. And they were all American nannies and they came for a year and then they left and then the new nanny came. So the second book that follows Better Than Gelato is called Bigger Than Versace. And it is about the next nanny who shows up in the Rossi house to be a nanny for Isabella. And this was really fun because this was a mix of true to life, like the Rossi family and Isa and her parents, Marco and Sophia, they are true characters in my head and in the first book. But Lydia is an invention of my brain, and so we could take her any direction we wanted, and that was really fun to do. Since you asked about the books that I have written since Better Than Gelato, I do have some exciting news to share that just this morning I signed a 2-book contract with City Owl Press for the next 2 books in the Ciao Bella series. And I am so excited about those ones. So the next one is Bigger Than Versace, and that one is completed. And then the third one in the series is Brighter Than Times Square. And that is actually Isabella's story. After writing 2 stories of nannies who come and stay at her home and their experiences of falling in love, I thought it would be fun to give Isabella her own story. So the third book in the series is when Isabella, now age 20, comes to New York for the summer to do a Model United Nations conference. And it's about her experiences in America and falling in love for the first time.
Well, that's so exciting, and I love that because in a way, you get to see this little girl grow up, and now you actually get to see her experiences after she's been on the sidelines watching all these other people fall in love.
Yes, yeah, it's been really fun. I've just been diving into that the last couple of weeks, and I'm very excited about it. And as I said, I just signed the contract this morning, so we are celebrating in our house tonight with sparkling cider and gelato, and we had a big dance party earlier. It's very exciting in our house today.
Oh, I'm so excited that like we had this interview today then because like
I know it's good timing.
oh, excellent. That's so wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. Congratulations. That's such great
Thank you.
news.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel super excited about it. I just feel really grateful that I get to continue on this writing journey.
From what it sounds like, you're really in the rom-com space. Have you always wanted to write rom-coms, or is that something you just happened to fall into because that's what the first book was? What draws you to writing this particular genre?
The second, I kind of fell into it because I had this story already in my mind of this experience that I had that I thought would make a good rom-com novel. And so I started the first one as rom-coms, but I've also always loved rom-coms. I am a sucker for every Sophie Kinsella book out there. She creates these characters that are so quirky and they get themselves in the most ridiculous situations, and I love watching them try to figure their way out of that. So I am a sucker for good rom-coms. I love Sophie Kinsella. I love Sarah Adams, and it's been really fun to explore that space of romance novels with some humor in them. That being said, I have a whole folder of ideas and they like span all the genres. So I've got some fun plans um, for a young adult novel that I'm excited about. And I also really love stories with very twisty plots and puzzles. So I would love to do maybe a cozy mystery. Those things will all be down the road though. Right now, I am just excited to be working on the Ciao Bella series and finishing that up. And then, and I'm just gonna say a tiny bit, I have another rom-com series in mind after that that I'm very excited about, but I haven't talked to my publisher or anybody about, so I really can't say a word, but I have some more fun rom-com ideas that I'm dying to get on paper. But then maybe after that, I would love to venture into some other genres.
Honestly, it is the best problem to have too many ideas. So I wish you all the best because that sounds like an excellent position to be in.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't feel old, but I'm suddenly feeling like I don't have enough time to write all of the things that I want to write in my lifetime. I need to learn to write faster.
I don't know if it's a matter of writing faster so much as being really happy with everything that you are writing.
I
If
think
you
that's true. Yeah.
if you're really content with everything that you're doing, and you're not feeling like, you know what, I need to be writing something else right now, and I'm stuck on this horrible project that I just need to get out the door for reasons. I think the more you find the satisfaction in the project you're working on, the easier it is to be able to say, I don't need to be doing it. It'd be great to do something else in the future, but right now I'm really happy with what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's a very good perspective because I have definitely had those conversations with authors that are just like, oh, I'm under contract. I have to do this one. So I'm just trying to get it done really fast so I can move on to this other thing that I like. And I'm in a really lucky position where I'm just so excited to be writing the things that I'm writing right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things that I think all authors talk about is how many books do they have on contract and what do they have to do as far as like to fulfill the obligations of their contract. And
Yeah.
so if you're in a series, then you have to write the rest of the series. It's part of the
Yes.
contract.
Yeah.
If you're in a multi-book deal that's not a series, you have a little bit of flexibility on what those books are. They could be standalones, they might be a series, but you don't have to, be very specific. You can kind of, at that point, there's a little bit more flexibility of what you're putting out. And
Yeah.
then if you're just on a one book deal, it's kind of nice because you're like, all right, I've sold the book. I don't have to, I'm not under obligation to do the next thing. I can take my time and
Yes.
figure out if I want to change genre, change this, change that. But also there's the fear of like the bigger book deal's nice.
Sure, yes, but I mean, it comes with that extra weight and expectations. So you definitely want to be sure that you're excited about the project you're committing to. Otherwise, it will be miserable for the whole time you're working on it.
It's honestly something my agent told me once. She was just like, you have to be careful with series because if you sell a series and then what happens if the series fails, then you're just stuck continuing to write the series and you're just going to be
Yeah.
miserable and miserable and miserable. And honestly, as somebody who has never been very financially secure, my immediate reaction was, well, yeah, but I still get my advance. So at
Yes,
least
but I'm
there's
still bringing it.
like,
No, I totally get that. Yeah, there's
um,
definitely some security. Like I feel a tremendous relief to be like, okay, I've got two more books that are locked down and under contract, and that makes me feel really, really good to be in that position. But I think it would be a different feeling if it was like, yeah, but I'm not really excited about those books, you know? If it's like, I'm writing rom-com, but I would really love to be writing a psychological thriller, then that is gonna turn what could otherwise be a positive experience into a really discouraging and tougher experience.
it's very difficult to find inspiration when you're under a lot of stress.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
And so, like, the more stress you put on the process of writing, the more that you say this book needs to be successful because if it isn't successful, I'm gonna die penniless in a ditch. And versus like because now it's not about the art or the craft. Now it's you're so focused on the outcome versus the experience of writing, the story itself, the all of the things that made you want to write in the first place
Yeah.
that the actual ability to do that is stymied because now you're not finding that joy or inspiration. Now you're just trapped. And I say this from experience.
And that sounds a little bit personal. That sounds like you're speaking from experience there. But I couldn't agree more. And I'm one of those people, I do not rise to the occasion under stress, okay? I sink into a blanket burrito with a block of cheese under stress. So I am trying to make my writing experience as comfortable and easy and, like you said, joy-filled as I can. That's when I'm definitely going to do my best work.
Yeah, because I think there's a love of the craft itself that motivates most writers. I'm sure there are
Yeah.
many people out there who love just doing it because they might get paid. Um, but
Yeah.
I do think that for most writers, the reason we chose this profession, this craft, whatever stage of writing you're in, whether you're just doing it for fun or not, because you don't need to publish. You could just write to write. There's no need
Right.
to publish. Um, but I think most writers, the reason we write is because it satisfies something inside. Like the
Mhm.
ability to create the story and to share that story is it's satisfying. It feels good.
Yes, it is. And I remember when I, again, I had 4 little kids and I was just coming off what me and my husband called the dark years of sleep deprivation and just another human spitting up on you on a regular basis. And we're just coming out of that, and I had started writing in the evenings. And on one occasion, I was sitting on the couch, and my husband was sitting next to me, and I was kind of giggling about something I wrote. And he looks over at me and he says, I have not seen you this happy in a long time. And it made me immediately feel guilt because I'm a mom and that's all we feel all the time, it seems like, about like, no, but I should be feeling joy with my kids. I'm gonna leave that for somebody else to discuss, but I really did feel this like awakening joy and coming back to writing, and it definitely feels so satisfying and meaningful and exciting to me. And I do light up in a way that only comes from writing. That I love it and I love writing, and I'm grateful that this is what I get to be doing right now at this stage in my life.
Honestly, even if I never sold another book professionally again, I would not stop writing. Like
Right?
I
Yes.
couldn't stop. It's I need to say, like, even if it's just me and my journal, and that's the only
Yeah.
audience I've got, like, the act of it at this point is so ingrained in me, where it's like I have something in my head, I've listened to a music somewhere, and like, I know the exact scene that that song goes to, and I can work it out, and I know exactly what it is. Like, I just feel like the art of creation at a certain point is just in my DNA. And so there's a break between, even if it's not successful, it's so wonderful just to do it.
Yes. And I would would submit that to this need for creation, everybody has. And maybe we create as writers and other people create as artists or musicians. But I think that all of us have an innate desire to create something. And it's really satisfying when we get a chance to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, like, people who crochet, people who knit, people who, build sandcastles that I have no idea how they make these giant sandcastles that are like 5 feet tall and actually have, cannonade on the side. Like,
Oh,
there
yes.
are
Yeah,
some,
I'm a Florida girl, so they have these big competitions at the beaches and it's incredible.
but the amount of, I mean, like, every one of these things, every craft requires so much training, so much work, so much learning. I mean, to build a sandcastle, you need to figure out the correct moisture to sand ratio,
Yeah.
which is something that I couldn't figure. I don't know, but it's a constant act of learning and improving. And I think throughout the writing journey, as we started at the beginning of this conversation, you created the first thing and you needed to do a lot of training to make sure that the
Yeah.
final product became what it was.
Yeah.
And all of that constant training and improving just helps the craft get better and better and better. And it takes a while. It's not an
Yes.
instantaneous process.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what makes a successful writer is somebody who gets that feedback that you had and then continues going. They're like, all right, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to continue going because it's something I want to do. They're going to continue writing. They're going to continue putting stuff out rather than saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm gonna go crochet something.
Yes. Well, and I remember getting some advice from one of my new writing friends when I was I don't know if it was when I was looking for an agent or maybe I had an agent and my manuscript was on submission. I can't remember, but she told me the people who are writers, they're not always the most gifted writers that are on the market right now. They are the ones who didn't give up, who didn't stop writing. And like my advice for anybody who's feeling discouraged about the writing process would be like, that's okay. It's discouraging. That's fine. Your feelings are probably valid. That character probably is giving you trouble for no reason, but don't stop writing. Stick with it. If this is something that you love, don't stop. Just continue. And that may translate into commercial success, or it may just translate into personal fulfillment. And that is great too.
And I think really being honest with yourself, do you want to be commercially successful or do you just want to tell the story? Because being a writer and being a professional trad pub author are two different things.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, and the author life may not be for everybody. And that's okay. And admitting yourself is like, you know what? I don't want to deal with never looking at my Goodreads comments. I don't want
I
to
know.
deal with editors. I don't want to deal with marketing or social
Oh,
media
for me, it's the
campaigns.
marketing. Yeah.
It's awful.
I'm not a natural social media person. So that has been another learning curve is I just started an Instagram account a year ago. So I'm 10 years late on that trend, and that has been a big learning curve, the social media and the marketing that goes into a book. I would love to spend all of my time writing.
Yeah. I had an Instagram account prior. I think I started it, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, something like that. And the only thing on that account were photos of like nature and birds because I'd take pictures and then my sister couldn't see them very well from like, because when I was trying to send them to her. So I was like, fine, I'll
Okay.
post on Instagram for you. And that was like literally all it was. I was like, look, a swan. And I would send her the swan on Instagram.
That's
And literally, if you
great.
like scroll down through my Instagram, that's what you'll find is like castle, flower, bird, dog, like that. And then
I'm
it's,
going back to your Instagram now. I want to see these beautiful nature pictures.
oh, they're good. Like I'm proud of myself. Like here's Königsberg, and here's the swan. Like there's a never mind. It's a tangent. You can go to the Instagram and find the swans of Strasbourg. Um,
That's
but
awesome.
at some point I was like, oh, I guess I have to actually like be professional now because for whatever reason I set this up and I used my author name. I don't know why I did that. So it's like, okay, I guess I have to, convert this to being a marketing thing. So there's like a shift. It's like, here are the
Yeah.
swan photos. Here's the Sunblessed Prince. Here's all the advertising for the Sunblessed Prince. Here's all this thing.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, okay.
And that can be a tricky line to walk. So I've tried to fulfill my marketing obligation and um promote my book and share my book while also not like driving myself crazy. So that's why I'm doing things like, yes, I will take a very fancy author photo. But guess what? It's going to be in my bathtub that I filled up with books because that to me seems like a fun author photo. So it's not going to be a very artsy black and white one where I'm staring off into the distance. It's literally my husband and kids piled a bunch of books on top of me and I'm grinning like a maniac because I'm in a bathtub full of books. So I think it can be tricky trying to walk this line of our professional selves and our authentic selves. And I'm trying my best to do that, but it is a little bit tricky.
It is. And there are moments where it's just like, can I post a picture of a squirrel or is that off brand now?
I know, right? Everything is like stay on brand. But this squirrel has nothing to do with Sunblessed Prince, but it's an awesome squirrel. It deserves to have a
Just
picture on
like write it
Instagram.
in the corner if you like the
Yes.
squirrel, you might want to read my
Check
book.
out my book. That's
Read the
great.
book for more squirrel content.
Put a caption. Have the squirrel be saying good things about your book.
Absolutely. Um, anyway, before I let you go today, I did want to ask, is there anything we haven't had a chance to talk about that you would like to talk about before we go?
No, I have absolutely loved this conversation. I think maybe the only thing I would say is maybe a tiny apology to the real life characters in Better Than Gelato, who some of you I greatly exaggerated your flaws and maligned you a little bit, but it was all for the good of the novel. So I hope they'll forgive me.
Have you talked to any of the people who are also in the book and told them that you're making this book?
I have actually. I reached out to Isabella, who is our 6-year-old in the first novel, and she was very excited about it. I'm really hoping that we get the foreign rights for Italian so that she'll be able to read it in her own language. And I did have to tell her, so Isa, I have written you as a very spoiled and naughty child, and it was mostly for effect, and I hope you won't take offense. And she was like, no, no, that's okay. I understand. It's just a book and that's fine. But I was feeling like a little bit nervous about her actually reading it.
Well, I hope she'll
I
love it.
also
And
I actually also had to, at my agent's request, reach out to the love interest in this story, who I did not end up marrying. And I had to send a message to him after not talking to him for 20 years about this book coming out. And that is probably the most embarrassing moment of my life in the last decade. My husband thinks it's hilarious. He was just like cackling with glee at how embarrassing this was for me to have to reach out to an old ex-boyfriend and be like, remember that year we spent together in Italy? I might have written a romance book about it, and that might be getting published soon. And yikes, that happened. So
did he
that was a
take it
little
well?
embarrassing. What's that?
Did he take it well?
Oh, he was very gracious. Yes, yes. It was a very sweet response, and in fact, it was very funny. I don't want to spoil too much, but in Better Than Gelato, there's some conversation between our two main characters, and this response from my real life ex-boyfriend. Some of the things he was saying and phrases that he was using were like word for word, like they were pulled out of my book. Like it was Jake's exact response to Juliet, and I was like, wow, I really nailed that character. Like this was legit what he would have said. Because then all these years later, his response was very sweet and gracious, and it was just funny how well those two things matched up, the reality and then the fiction that I had written there.
So exciting. Thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful story to end on.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. You've been an excellent host, and it has been so fun to get to nerd out and talk about this book that I love so much.
Anytime. And we'd love to have you back when your next books come out. We can talk about that next time.
Okay, I love that. I am down for it. Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Okay, have a wonderful day, Lindsay.
That's it for this week's episode of Lindsey Byrd in Writing is Hard. You can find out more about Libby Tanner, Better Than Gelato, and Libby's list of writing resources on her website in the description. If you enjoyed this content, please do like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more. Bye for now.